Executing a no-cut camera. I thought it was impossible when I read the script. I thought it was impossible when I looked at our equipment. I thought it was impossible when I looked at the reality of our production pipelines. But it's possible. It's just incredibly challenging. Hi, I'm Dwayne Arazi, Director of Photography on God of War, and this is how we built a cinematic experience on God of War in a single shot. Every cinematic style delivers a story in its own way. It imparts a kind of subconscious flavor to how you experience the overall storyline. When you read a script, the way things are mostly delivered is what's called the A-B shot. So you shoot this guy, you shoot that guy, you shoot this guy, you shoot that guy. And when you see a really complex narrative dialogue delivered without cuts, that doesn't look like the camera's swinging back and forth and actually everything's just flowing organic, it's incredibly gratifying.
It does not attack.
When you combine a sense of documentary with a camera that doesn't cut, you get a very empathetic point of view to the character. It's such an immersive way to experience the hero's journey. I don't think the player would have experienced anything like this before.
What are we hunting?
You are hunting deer.
So I was running around with a camera, and we had to shoot it in one take perfectly. The actors had to deliver their performance perfectly, their dialogue perfectly, move perfectly, hit their marks perfectly. I had to hit my marks perfectly, no errors. That was on one side. Then on the other side was, okay, now we have a single shot camera for our cinematics. How do we get that to blend seamlessly in and out of the actual gameplay? It was a Herculean effort in communication. You had a bunch of technical teams, visual teams, and cinematic teams having to work perfectly together to know exactly who's doing what and when to make sure the player will do exactly the right thing. The scene from our 2016 E3 demo where Kratos walks up to his son right after he shot the deer, it was a very somber moment, juxtaposed with a lot of combat, so we wanted to carry into that shot very smoothly to land that emotion. We worked with the level designers and with our camera designers and with the cinematic team. The experience was seamless. You walked into this open environment and suddenly Kratos walks into this beautiful, evocative cinematic. And I think that's when I started feeling that we can do this, we can nail this. It was visually climbing Mount Everest, and seeing it succeed was incredibly rewarding.
This way.
Cut.
Why'd you say nothing?
From the actual
I
trailer.
think I'm weak because I'm not like you. I know I was never what you wanted. But after all this, I thought maybe things were different.
You do not know everything, boy.
No. But at least I know the truth now.
The truth. The truth.
Why did you wait so long to tell me?
I had hoped to spare you. You are welcome to surprise me.
Cut.
Clear.
He could fit in your pocket.
Every God of War had power fantasy when it comes to Kratos, meaning that you go into fights and you feel really strong. You feel powerful, you feel like you can take them on, you feel like you can take anything on, no matter how small, no matter how big, it's like Kratos can handle it. So for this game, even though we were changing pretty much everything about the combat, we wanted to make sure that Kratos still felt like he was a powerhouse.
The two things that we had talked about early on were like, one, we don't want to make an open world game. Two, we don't want to just mimic Dark Souls. As much as we like that game, there is kind of this interesting loop inside of it that we wanted to capture. That's when we really, I think, started embracing the fact that not all of God of War just has to be charge in, hit, and then sort of wake up after everything's over, right? We just didn't have that strategic element, that cerebral engagement. And all of the pieces that we put together throughout development put the player in a position that they have to think as they're fighting.
For this game, you know, he's got a new weapon, his Leviathan axe, and with this weapon we wanted to be a little bit more tactical, still feel powerful at the end of the day, but have a little bit more decision making and a little bit more deliberate actions on the player.
We created scenarios in which, hey, it's advantageous to really experiment with this. And we've noticed that once people start seeing that, oh, I'm gonna try that one now, right? Because we give you a lot.
We want to make sure that, hey, when you win this fight, did you win it slightly different than this other player won the fight? Maybe you kicked him into a wall, stunned him, and grabbed him. Maybe you tripped him and then slammed your axe on top of him and split him in half. There's multiple ways to handle enemies this game.
But I love the kind of trick shot stuff with the axe. So like throwing and tripping the character and then repositioning myself to put another character between me and the axe, recalling the axe and taking the character from the ground, popping him up, hitting another character in that line from behind, grabbing and then comboing that and launching him up and then throwing a runic attack on him.
Once you throw your axe, we didn't want Kratos to be useless. You know, we wanted to make sure that he still had a moveset. So he's got a shield that can expand on command now. A lot of his bare hand attacks uses that to get more damage. With this thing, he can stun much easier, much faster than the axe itself.
Well, Kratos can throw the axe. He has ranged abilities, right? If you're blocking, you have to block. But the addition of Atreus means I can block and actually fire arrows. So I can strategize that I can open somebody up while maintaining some safety and then quickly get in while they're opened up and then follow that up with something. So it gives you a really interesting sense that I can both have an aggressive stance and a defensive stance at the same time. God of War was, the boat deck, right? On the Hydra ship, one section, bam, you already understand kind of all of the base combat stuff, and then we incorporate a little bit of magic later. So this was far more ambitious, and I think honestly, the audiences are more adept at games. They've played a lot more games. The game industry has progressed and matured, so people are looking for inherently a greater depth to the games that they're playing.
Just tell me when to shoot.
Making sure that Atreus wasn't a pain in your ass was a big part of this game.
Atreus needed to have some sort of ability or something he brought to the table that was different from Kratos. His ability to understand the language, right? In our world, the writing of the runes and the speaking of the runes are like the ignition for magic. Atreus' ability to understand this stuff allows him to have magical abilities that Kratos can't have.
The giants used to gather here to trade with the gods a long time ago.
The simplicity of the controls was imperative.
Should I fire?
Wait for my mark.
We did not want to be giving commands or have complex orders or anything like that. He is able to autonomously divide the battlefield just a little bit, so he's able to take attention, if you will, aggro in some games it's called, away from enemies. So if you have a large pack of enemies, firing the arrows will get their attention.
We had him design like a suite of moves for him that he could do that can help melee with the bow and trip enemies and keep them at bay. He's a little guy, so he can jump on an enemy and grab them from time to time. We didn't want people micromanaging the sun. Again, we didn't want people to think of him as any kind of hindrance, anything that they really had to worry about. You can use him to your heart's content, whatever you would like to do, but if you don't do anything, he'll still do a lot of things.
There are certain circumstances that there are enemies that say, I'm going to target him. But if he gets into trouble, he's able to get himself out of trouble most of the time.
When you're in a fight with Atreus, it's like you definitely feel his presence. He feels like he's there with you every step of the way. You wanted to make sure that he always felt like somebody that was helping Kratos and benefiting you, and you never want to be without him.
Again.
For the players.